What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another movie review here on Action Industries. My name is Ben Bateman. Today we are talking about the film Respect, the biopic about the great, legendary, maybe greatest singer of all time, Aretha Franklin. Comes out this Friday. I screened the film a couple days ago, and the first thing I will say about this is that, as expected, and I think as necessary to have one of these types of films do well, Jennifer Hudson kills it. She absolutely slays. I think she's originally American Idol, I'm pretty sure, not The Voice. I think she predates The Voice. But she wins an Oscar for Dreamgirls back in 2007. 2006 when the film came out, it was a big year for her. Everybody talking about the sort of crossover, the singer doing movies. But she's very equipped, obviously, to do these types of roles where she is singing. That's the strength, that's the talent of Jennifer Hudson above all else. And she is great in Dreamgirls. Going into this film, the first piece of the recipe, and this is a first-time director doing this, a director who we've known from doing television, but primarily television. And so this is a movie that's one of those mid-year, has to kind of come out of left field, a story that we want to hear, and this movie has to overperform to get on people's radars. And the big thing that everybody wants here is, of course, an Oscar nomination for Jennifer Hudson. So when I watched this movie, I went into it with the same attitude that I go into with most music biopics. You know what you're getting into, right? You 100% know there's a formula here that exists that Hollywood is very committed to, and the beats that these movies hit tend to be very familiar. Some work better than others. Sometimes you get a really interesting take on it, like Judy a couple years ago, where it's about the later stage of her life. And so while you still have sort of familiar pieces, you know you're in a dark place with that film because of who she is when the movie starts. You know all of the sort of glory days have already passed. And then you have other ones that, are very popular in the last few years, like Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man. And certainly like Rocket Man takes liberties. It's an interesting movie. What this movie does is pretty down the middle. It hits most of the beats that you expect in a film like this. And when I say that, it's 2 hours and 25 minutes. So because of the fact that it sticks to a formula that we're very familiar with, it does feel a little long. I think the movie is anchored by the fact that Jennifer Hudson is so good as Aretha Franklin. I think overall the performances are very strong. I like Forrest Whitaker as her father. You have Marlon Wayans in there, and he's great. He plays they actually both play the sort of classic male controlling character in the music biopic. I think that actually leads to my major criticism of the genre. I think when you walk into a film like this and you want to make this, and the director whose name I hope I'm pronouncing correctly is Liesl Tommy. That it's a first time effort from her, and I actually have liked the shows that she's worked on, but it's a really tall order to make a movie like this stand out and make it interesting, because what's unfair is that the performer, Jennifer Hudson, she has to come in and commit totally to embodying this legend, which she does. And in general, if the performer doing that in one of these movies doesn't, of course the movie's going to fail. You can't make a movie like this unless you have an incredible performance from that person. But that should be the only thing Jennifer Hudson should be worried about, right? She should not be worried about anything else. The script, the structure. She should be, once she agrees to do the movie, she should be saying the lines she's told to say, and she should be performing the hell out of them, which she does. But the director, I feel like, has a little bit more responsibility to recognize that when you're telling the story, it isn't interesting when you sort of know the beats. You know them before they happen. And that's because these movies often stick to the same structure, which is somewhere early on in this famous person's life, there's a personal tragedy or a trauma. And what's terrible about these stories, not the fact that the stories are terrible, but what's terrible is that it's always true. Something awful did happen. There was a death. There was some sort of horrible trauma, as this movie has. This movie starts with a horrible trauma. And you know that performer and that person in real life carries that with them. The problem is, because so many of them have that, in Ray, it's a death early on, you end up with this thing where it feels like so many of the characters' decisions throughout the film are informed by that tragedy, and it makes the character feel less interesting. Like, they're simple. They are literally just affected by this one thing, and everything bad that happens and all of their demons come back to that one thing. And from a script writing standpoint, it's pretty obvious to do that. But from an audience perspective, if this was the first time I'd ever seen this, I probably would feel differently, but I've just seen that so many times. The second beat that we always hit is that you have the person on their way up. You have a couple moments where they're cresting, and they write one of their famous songs. We've seen it in all of them. You see it in Rocket Man, you see it in Bohemian Rhapsody, and you see it in Straight Outta Compton. You watch them write it and discover it. And as a songwriter, I can tell you, it's pretty cool when you're writing a song you're proud of. I've obviously never had a hit in my life, but it's still a very cool feeling when you like happen upon something that you like. And so I recognize it, and it's a real feeling, and it's especially cool when you're watching them write something iconic. But again, it's a very familiar scene that we have watched before. The third beat, and this is probably the one that I find the most frustrating, is domineering male characters who are basically controlling this unstable artist. And the crazy and sad thing about this is that that is absolutely 100% based on reality. Those characters would not exist in these stories. They would not get written into these scripts the way they do unless that's actually what had happened. And this film has not just one, but two. Her father, Forrest Whitaker, as well as Ted, who is her husband. I think it's Ted, right? Or is Ted the second husband? I think Ted's the first husband. Marlon Wayans is another one of the same. And I think this movie hits the nail on the head so hard, which is that the movie is called Respect. She wants respect. She has these male characters speaking for her throughout the film. But why would she have these male characters speaking for her when she has one of the most transcendent voices in the history of voices? Again, hitting the nail on the head so hard. She does start to stand up for herself. That's the big turn in the movie. Now, the interesting thing about this movie is she starts to stand up for herself, but you never really feel like she has it together all the way. She starts to get it together at the end. And again, that's the last piece of the formula that we're used to, which is you catch this performer on their sort of glory run as they have started to figure out what's going to be the rest of their career. And traditionally, the rest of their career is the kind of, in our memories, boring part where they're just selling out concerts around the world and they don't have hits anymore. You usually watch them get their last hit or their biggest hit, and then you get some stuff written on the screen about the rest of their life and what they did. All of these things are true for this movie. That's the tough part about this, is that at 2 hours, almost 2 hours and 30 minutes, it feels like it is sticking to that formula about as hard as you can stick to the formula. So what I can say is that if you love Aretha Franklin and you appreciate powerhouse singers, I think you'll really enjoy Jennifer Hudson's performance. I think there are some great scenes in this movie. I think that the set design, I think that the costume design, the art direction's all really, really cool. I think there are some emotional scenes in the film. There's some performances I really like. Mark Maron is in there. As I mentioned, Marlon Wayans, I really like him in the movie. I think Forrest Whitaker's very good. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that I appreciate and scenes that did it for me. But on the whole, would I watch this movie again? I wouldn't. And I will tell you guys, the one exception to the rule of the formula that I'm talking about, and the one that I like so much, is Walk the Line. Now, Walk the Line still hits a lot of the same beats, right? It does. It has the same thing at the beginning. There's a personal tragedy. But the difference with Walk the Line is Johnny Cash is kind of a piece of shit the whole movie. Reese Witherspoon, June Carter Cash, she's kind of the hero of the story. And he continues to fuck up the entire movie. He never really gets it together. Even at the end when he proposes to her in that emotional moment on stage, it's only following up his drunk proposal on the bus shortly before, and she finally gives in and says yes because she realizes that that's just who the guy is. And if she's going to love him, she's going to love him. In the end, it's probably why she won the Oscar, because she maybe had the harder role to perform, but it's a more complex story and it's a more interesting story. It's another reason I like Judy a little more. They just break away a little bit. By the end of Walk the Line, you don't really get the sense Johnny Cash has it together. He's going to probably kind of be a piece of shit the rest of the movie also. That just seems like who he would be in the movie. So I think to that end, Respect struggles a little bit to keep my attention. Would I call it bad? Definitely not. Would I call it overlong? Absolutely. Is it better than average on the scale of 5 to 10, or I should say 1 to 10 with 5 being dead average? Definitely. I think this movie's a 6. I think this movie's a 6.1 maybe. And maybe you guys watch it and you feel totally different than I do, but for me, it just doesn't quite crack into this movie is something I'd recommend and you should definitely see it. Except for the fact that I think the performance is very strong and it's very fun to watch her, especially at the end. The film closes with her doing Amazing Grace, which it turns out was, I guess, her best-selling album, a gospel album. That part of her career I didn't know. There were some beats in the story, especially like that one that I learned that I thought were really cool to learn about. And she, I mean, like Jennifer Hudson is just like such a superstar. It's crazy to watch her do that. So that's going to be my review here for Respect. If you guys enjoyed what I did here, if you like what we do on the channel, be sure to leave a comment below, hit that subscribe button, and of course, thumbs up on the video. We do movie reviews, trailer reactions, live streams all the time. My name is merely Ben Bateman, and this is Action Industries. Thanks for watching another review here, guys. We'll see you on the next one.